Hi, in honor of International Women's Day 2021 and Women's History Month, RockCreek is kicking off a new series called RockCreek's Women's Voices. And today we will have the inaugural episode. So this inaugural episode will focus on the challenges during COVID, and it's entitled Thriving in Challenging Times. So during this, this chat with RockCreek senior women, we're going to be thinking about challenges and opportunities during the pandemic, lessons that we've all learned, challenges that we faced and how we've dealt with them, and thinking about moving on to the future, things that may work that we can carry forward with us at home, in the office, and in our communities. So today, I'm happy that we have a panel of wonderful senior women at RockCreek. And they are, I'll introduce them very, very briefly so that we can start in with the chat. But first, in no particular order, is Yan Wang, who is a senior member of the investment team focusing on global equities and emerging markets in Asia. Nafis Clay, who's a senior member of the accounting team focusing on fund accounting for RockCreek's numerous funds and portfolios. I have Nina Raj, another senior woman at RockCreek focusing on Office of CEO and Special Projects. And then I have Marian Sapinski, who is a senior operational due diligence professional focusing on due diligence for our hedge funds, private equity, private credit, real estate, and other RockCreek portfolios. Welcome everyone here. My name is Sherri Rossoff. And I'm a managing director at RockCreek. It's been here 16 years or so, or 15, 16 years. So we're going to start the chat by getting to set the landscape of where each of these senior women from RockCreek have been spending the year during COVID, the challenges that they have faced. But first, we're just going to get into a little bit about the context, where they're located, what their situation is in terms of working. I guess everyone likes to know the whole setup, and then we can get into some of the discussion points. So Nina?
Hi, thank you, Sherri, for the lovely introduction. I am located in Vienna, Virginia, right outside Washington, D.C. I've been working from home along with my husband, who's also working from home. I have two young children, a 4-year-old boy and a 7-year-old. Who is doing virtual school. The 4-year-old is in preschool. So we've been managing our setup from home.
Jan.
Oh, thank you, Sherri. I work from Portland, Oregon. I moved out here with my husband and our two boys 2 years ago. So I am in the West Coast time zone, but I work the East Coast hour. And I have, two boys. So one just turned 2, and the other one is 4.5.
Nafis.
Hi, so I'm actually in DC. My husband and I, we both work from home. And when the pandemic started, my son was 8. Now he's 9, and he's also home with me. Oh, with us, I guess, working and doing school from home as well.
Marian also has school going on, I'm sure.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me today. So I'm based out of DC. Before COVID started, I was working from the DC office. Now I'm working remotely. And I have my husband also working remotely. We have had some changes along the way in terms of our setup, but I do have 2 young daughters. One is turning 3 next week, and the other one is almost 6. We have had some disruption in terms of school, but so we have had some school in person and some virtual learning to manage here.
Great. So what we're going to turn to next is a discussion about some of the particular challenges that you've all faced. And in particular, I know that, Jan being on the West Coast, I think there are certain things that have been going on there that you might want to touch on that make your experiences unique. And Marian, similarly with your family, and you're in Europe and in France. Some insight into some of the challenges there with family in those places. So I'll turn it over to Nina in terms of the challenges that you've been facing.
Thanks. So I think one of the biggest challenges for me was when the pandemic started. My 7-year-old was 6 at the time and had transitioned from in-person kindergarten to virtual kindergarten. So kind of managing the balance of trying to make sure that I'm on all the Zoom calls I need to be on for work, yet trying to manage teaching a kindergartner how to use a computer, how to make sure to tell time so he's on class at all times. So just kind of a more of trying to figure out how virtual school was going to work with our day-to-day life, and having a 4-year-old who's not in any type of school except preschool, what to do with him while we're all trying to manage the rest of our schedules.
I know we've been on calls where it's actually been so charming to see, your boys and their different learning and how they're engaged, even if they're running around, the house in the background. So I know it's a challenge, but for some of us that don't live there, but just get to see it, it looks like so cute and actually nice that you get to see them close up, on a day-to-day basis. So
Yeah.
I don't know if it gets, if there's no break from it, that might be too much, but it's nice for us to see it.
Yes, it's definitely been nice because I think all of us who have the children, you'll all of us can say that we've had our children pop into a Zoom call every now and then, and it's kind of the new normal. I think people are just used to having kids pop into a Zoom every now and then.
I think, also Jan, your kids are a little younger, but also it's kind of interesting that, it's so hard to manage time. And I think some of our colleagues have, expressed that that's just a challenge. It's a challenge when you're in the office. It's a challenge during times of COVID. But somehow I think, it seems to be working out a little bit in terms of time management. So Jan, I know if you'd like to, or, jump in.
Yeah, so as you know, I have been working from home, before the pandemic. So I did work out a routine already because I'm on the West Coast, but work East Coast hours. So I actually start my day around 5 a.m. here, which is nice because the kids are still sleeping. So you have that quiet time and be able to be on, all the team calls. And of course, my day finished earlier West Coast time as well, which allow me to actually prepare family meals. And I, obviously we didn't eat out as much during the pandemic. So it was, was nice. I was actually, the time difference allowed me to cook for the kids and the family. And usually after the kids go to bed, and because I cover Asia, Asia starts again, evening here as well. So then I'll do some more work. So it actually worked out from a time management perspective, actually worked out fine for me. I would say that I think all of us probably face the challenge of, balancing between demand of work, housework, childcare, and especially with all the, school shutting down, and even for the younger children, all the play gym and everything just not available anymore. I feel particularly lucky that I have, full-time help at home, which allow me to continue to be 100% dedicated for my work and care for my family. So that stable help has been extremely important during this time.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I think it raises a few different issues, in terms of some of the privilege, that a lot of us kind of enjoy. We know there's a great deal of challenges out there. Obviously, we're only speaking about our personal challenges, that we're facing and what we could learn from it. Nafis, I think also, the balancing issue and the time management and, it seems that this group of RockCreek senior women is very blessed or very talented to be being able to navigate through this. So Nafis and Marion, then if you could maybe describe, the challenges that you're facing.
Yeah, so for me, the challenge here is trying to make my son understand, even though he's 9 now, is trying to make him understand, barrier between him and me. Like, I'm at work and you should be at school, and you can't talk to me all the time, especially when I'm on a call or I'm, whatever it is I'm doing. And it's very hard, even though we've been in this for like a year, can you help me print this, or can you scan this for me, or, whatever the case is. And so it's been hard trying to get him to realize that, I'm at work and he's at school. So what I've done over the past year, I've figured out that I have to, I guess, incorporate him into my day. And so I've used his school schedule and figure out when he has like a free period, or when he has recess, or when he has lunchtime, and then if I can, try to schedule my meetings around his schedule. So when I'm free, he's free, so then I can, give him the time that he needs. So I think even though, we've tried to manage, it is still a little bit difficult, but I have to remind myself that, my challenges are very minuscule compared to people in the pandemic. So yeah, I do feel blessed, and I do feel that the fact that we're able to work from home is like the biggest game changer ever in my life. Just not being able to commute, not having to do drop off and pick up and all that stuff. It gives me more time to allocate to him as well to allocate to work. So I think we figured out some balance, but it's not easy. But at the same time, I don't want to say that my challenges are so great compared to other people in the pandemic.
Yeah, I do have to give your son some credit, because in the early days, I think he was your little tech helper when you were trying to figure out some of the more intricate parts of the Zoom.
Yes.
And going back and forth between different systems. So
yes,
he's
he's a little techie for sure. So he was more than happy as soon as I'm like, how do I share my screen? Oh, I'll help you. He figured out how to do all that stuff. So you're right. He was definitely helpful for me, and he also actually scheduled a training for one of his teachers to teach them how to use Zoom and how to share screens and all that stuff. So yeah, not only is he helping me, he's helping his teachers.
That's amazing. I mean, I think I'm just wondering, Marion, please jump in, that makes him maybe, feel also that he's contributing to your success at RockCreek, and gets a little closer to that maybe he wouldn't have ordinarily. So Marianne, but please feel free others to join in the conversation. I just wanted to start out in a little more structured way, but please feel free.
Sure. I think this global pandemic has definitely kind of changed the way we work, and has introduced kind of blurry lines between what life is and what work was. And I really enjoyed having like this, obviously more life brought into my professional life, with this glass wall that previously separated my work and my personal lives being broken down. So I found that personally, I've been more productive working remotely and working that way, because I don't have to commute. I have more time to actually work at the end of the day, and more time also to spend with my family. So that's really has transformed. I think this pandemic really has transformed what I saw before, the binary work-life balance, into something of a new routine where work and life are more integrated. And I think RockCreek has also been very good at connecting people. We have had the proper IT infrastructure from the start in place. So we were able to move basically from day one to video conferencing. We also had some town hall meetings and more frequent meetings together that really created a bond with our colleagues. So we created bonds with our family, we created bonds with our colleagues. And I think, yeah, RockCreek has shown also that we've been able to onboard external, new people remotely from various locations, not only DC or New York, where we have our offices. And I think it also brought regional diversification that is great to a team. So overall, I think that's what I wanted to share to you in terms of what I felt with this pandemic. And I also felt my family and I, we've been very lucky, and I feel very privileged, because as you mentioned, Jan, maybe if we have had rough time at the beginning trying to figure out a new routine, we have been able to have the extra help needed to be able to focus on work and be as good parents as we were efficient workers. So.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you as well. And I think especially technology has been such a game changer. As you know, that I travel to Asia a lot. I mean, at least 3 or 4 times a year. And each time I'm usually gone 2 weeks. And that's a long time away from the family. But, you know, obviously with the pandemic, you know, a lot of borders are shut. But, you know, with the technology, I can be in, you know, Tokyo, Taipei, Hong Kong, Singapore, all in one day and still able to put my kids to bed. So I do enjoy that quite a bit.
I'm just also wondering if, you know, some of these things that you've mentioned, the whole group here in terms of, I'll say controlling your day, having a more integrated life experience on a day-to-day basis. You know, maybe it's also about, you know, I'll say control, you know, as a working mom in this group, or working moms, that you know, maybe the common, you know, some of the common elements that you're talking about in terms of like multitasking and scheduling and the travel, you know, it's really, you seem to be maybe kind of coping with some of the challenges because you're able to control what you can control in terms of your scheduling and making the most of the time. So maybe pat yourselves on the back, because that's what I'm hearing, you know, in terms of, you know, there's lots of demands clearly, but I think, you know, you're all seem to be making kind of the best of it, and not only just, you know, surviving, but, you know, using your schedules, using your children's schedules, using, you know, the not having to travel, you know, for work to even be more productive. So again, hats off to everyone on the call. Congrats that you've been able to kind of navigate really super successfully. I'm curious as to whether or not, you know, a few things. One, that you think, you know, women in general, maybe you agree or don't agree, we're always supposedly good at multitasking. I think that's definitely true, but, you know, and I think, you know, having the support at home, you know, can't be, you know, overstated. And also, you know, I think some others that maybe don't have those support systems, you know, it might be more challenging to them in terms of other family. And I know Marion, in terms of having a family that's far away, it might be challenging. Jan also has family that's far away. So if there's anything in terms of what you are seeing, like in Europe and, you know, in Asia, in terms of connecting.
I mean, at least for me, I feel that, you know, I obviously miss my parents a lot. They have been such a active part of our life. And then because of pandemic, we haven't seen each other for over a year. You know, especially young children, they grow up so fast. And a year, it's a long time. And, you know, have to really balance between, you know, wanting to be close to them, but then at the same time, don't want to risk their health, right? So I think that is, I would say that's probably, you know, the biggest challenge for me personally during this time. And I, you know, and I would also say that, I don't know, I feel that some of the feminine qualities like, you know, empathy, compassion, listening, collaboration, these quality and caring, the nurturing nature, these are quality are so important anytime, but especially during the pandemic. And I feel that these are the kind of quality that, you know, hold our family together, even though we obviously can't be together physically during this time. So, you know, those are the quality that kind of keep each of us, you know, going, and hopefully with everyone soon to be vaccinated, we can, you know, unite with our families again.
And I would add, we've probably taken for granted our social interaction with our families, extended families, our friends, our co-workers before COVID, obviously, but we now realize it's slightly of a different story. And I think it brings something, I would say, positive to the future of, I think, like social interaction with people, is that you'll really nurture this relationship and really feel lucky to have those when you have them, because you know it can stop one day suddenly. So I mean, it just changed slightly the perspective of just interacting with people in a positive way, I think.
Yeah, I would just add to, even though, my family is, they're still in the US, but my family is primarily in New York. And as I've mentioned, my son is 9, and this past year has been an entire year where every single important event in his life, whether it's the holidays, whether it's Christmas, Thanksgiving, birthday, whatever it is, he's been through one full year of everything, not seeing and being with my family. And that was really hard because when he was, when he was born, my mom moved here to take care of him for the first year and a half of his life. So they have that bond. And so being away from her grandson for so long, it's been kind of tough on her, but I think also because being in New York make it even so much worse for them to even try to travel. And so we haven't seen them, they haven't seen us in person. But going back to the technology we talked about, we've now established, whether for good or for bad, we've established a weekly movie night every Saturday evening. So we get on these Zoom calls or Google Hangouts or whatever, and so they see him every Saturday night, and they're forced to watch some kids movie because of him. But they're willing to make that sacrifice so they can spend some time with him every week and hear about how his week went, about school and whatever he's doing, and he gets a chance to see him and interact with him. So I think even though you can't be with them in person, and you do acknowledge and realize how difficult it is to do that, at least we were able to establish some sort of routine with them every week to be able to do movie night. But again, like I said, whether for good or bad, being on Zoom all the time, but it was the next best thing, I guess, for us.
To add to that, my situation is similar to Nafis, where I have family in the US. My parents are actually local to Northern Virginia, and they have been a huge support to us. Pre-pandemic, they were the ones that if the boys were sick and me and Vinny had to travel or go to the office, they'd be here in a heartbeat to watch the boys. But with the pandemic, their age, the risk that they're at, my dad having being high risk, we were driving by their house and the kids were waving from the car, and that was the extent of seeing my parents. It was just a drive-by. If it's a rainy day, okay, we'll wait till the next sunny day. And in the cold, we stand in the garage and hope that we get to spend a little bit of time together. As similar to what Nafis said, holidays were completely different. Birthdays were at home with us. Maybe a drive-by with a friend or some family who were around that could drive by and say happy birthday to the kids. So I think that made us appreciate what we do have in our day-to-day life. We were able to spend so much time just together as the 4 of us. But now I think my parents are vaccinated, fortunately, so they've been able to finally hug the boys, spend some time with us. So moving in the right direction, and hopefully, all of you get to see your family soon as well.
Well, I'm also noticing, when each of you have been talking, obviously about being full-time, entirely engaged at RockCreek, along with not only taking care of the children and, as you were saying, and the parenting responsibilities, but also I think what was known or is known as being a sandwich generation, where you also have responsibilities largely falling on women in terms of taking care of the grandparents, your parents and things. So that's kind of a whole other dimension of caregiving. So I think it's obviously you all have taken it on, and you all take it on with a smile. So that's really wonderful. I think, again, we're all very blessed that we're able to have that capacity, but it definitely we need to take a moment sometimes to kind of recognize that it's amazing to be able to do all of these things. I think we're all very fortunate that, I guess some of the nurturing and the characteristics that you've described that make for women to be successful in these challenging times, maybe to extrapolate, it's kind of true of RockCreek. We're over majority women at the firm. So hopefully we're able to as an ethos, have some of these kind of characteristics that have seen families through the pandemic also at the firm level. So hopefully it's another level of support and adding to the resilience. So I think there's a lot to kind of be thankful for in terms of things of that nature. I'm also interested in, what are you thinking in terms of looking toward the future? And, some of the things that you've all been engaged in, and, we've all kind of agreed that there's no thing like going back to the new normal. Things will be different. So if you kind of have the thoughts on taking it into the future and not only working remotely, but other thoughts about, how we're going to be kind of when we get on the other side.
I can start. I think one thing that I hope moving forward is that we continue to take advantage of the technology. I think being in the office, we spend a lot of time together in a room, but now through the pandemic, we realized how much we can also accomplish being on Zoom, being on Teams, and always being around your team, even if you're not physically around them. We have standing calls that we get to see each other and kind of touch base, see how everyone's doing, hear what everyone's up to. Hopefully that continues, and we've learned that we can be super productive at home, maybe more productive at home than in the office at some time. So I hope that's one of the things that we do continue to utilize.
Nina, I should point out though, I have heard people say, well now, with all the technology, I have to not only email people, but I have to text them. I have to put them out a Teams message.
Very true.
So, that takes some time and remembering to do all that. I think in general, we're, maybe over communication, especially at the beginning when we were remote, was super important to make sure everyone was close communicating. But I guess I see the point, if you don't get a response from like a Teams message, then you say, oh, I better email them or I better call.
Mm-hmm.
So it has two sides of that, I guess, right? Yeah. Anyone else in terms of on the other side? Yeah.
I absolutely. I mean, for me, because I have been working from home, I travel to DC, once a month, but still, 3 out of the 4 weeks I'm working from home in Portland. And the technology adoption, out of this pandemic is really remarkable. And, I would say the RockCreek EM team is especially good at utilizing technology just because, one, I'm on the West Coast and we also have colleagues in DC and colleagues in New York, right? So the team as a whole is very good about utilizing technology in general, but still there used to be a lot of like informal conversation, just someone walk to someone's desk and something happens, right? Now, all of that informal conversation is also move on to the technology platform, which make everyone feel, especially someone like me, feel very much included and empowered because I'm on the same page as everybody all the time, right? So I hope that will continue. And not within just RockCreek, and also I feel that a lot of times when we travel, like, if I go to Asia, sometimes the managers are not available because they're on the road visiting companies or something like that. But, throughout this pandemic, everyone is always available. You can always find a time to see their face and see their office and see their team. So it is quite amazing. And I'm sure that will continue going forward.
Yeah, and I would say outside of RockCreek, the use of technology when we reached out to our managers, video conferencing has been has proven to be very effective from an operational due diligence standpoint, and at time even brought a greater level of transparency in the meeting we had. So I think this is definitely something that I'd like to see be carried forward, and I'm sure it's part of now everybody's within RockCreek and outside of RockCreek. It's part of the way we work. So I don't see why we should go back to our old telephone lines to have calls with managers.
Yeah, I would add also back to the technology thing. I think I don't know if it's because of technology or because we're all stuck inside or what the case is, but I do find that people are just being more efficient. And so even with my team, like you're on Teams all the time, you call each other up. but it just seems more efficient because everybody just is always available. So that might be a bad thing. I don't know. I thought it was a good thing because we're being more efficient, but I think people might be, well, that's because I'm always available and I never shut down. And like, I'm guilty of that. I'm never shutting my computer off. I'm always hopping on, answering an email or, doing a request or whatever. But I think the stress from commuting, this is a whole lot. I'd rather take the stress to having my computer on all the time than having the stress of commuting and trying to find a parking spot and paying for parking and all that stuff. I will take this any day over that. So I do hope that when RockCreek thinks of, going forward, that we would still have access to all the technology and also have some option of remote working for people who need it or want to find it is more efficient. I think this has been a positive for the most part. And so I hope this is considered going forward.
Yeah, another thing I want to add is that I also feel, sometimes working from home can be a lonely experience, right? Especially with the pandemic, that you're not interacting with your friends or family, even outside of work anymore. So I feel that I actually got a lot closer to my colleague this year more than ever. And I think we all face probably different struggles during this past year. And oftentimes I find myself actually turn to my colleague who I spend enormous amount of time with on a daily basis. And I feel that kind of bond that we created this year will continue to get carried forward even when life does go back to normal.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Jan on that. On our daily life, we're at home with our husbands and our 2 children, and that's who we see all day, every day. So popping onto a Zoom and seeing some familiar faces and, getting to just kind of chat and, when you have a break for 5 minutes, being like, oh, hi, Jan, how you doing today? It's definitely nice. I think it's built, like Jan said, I think it's built our teams to be much closer, which is hopefully just continues to grow.
I think I'm making a note for a future episode or chat in this series because, as things get more integrated, like we're discussing in terms of the work in the home. And in fact, during this time when people have had life events, new babies and the like, it's actually seems so much sweeter almost, just so thrilled to hear a good, nice news and everyone sharing all that. So I think one thought going into the future is that at some point, that more even a blurring of the traditional like work-life balance and like if we're in everyone's living rooms, for all these calls and we really feel, it's not going to get to a point where it's really overload. And then we really have to think about other strategies, right, to adjust. So I think, I think our time frame, a lot of other firms got into, I think, a very fatigued place, 6 months or a year. I don't, luckily we're not there. We're still kind of thinking of new things and doing things, very well. But it's, I guess, something to always to keep back, there's always pluses and minuses. And we have to try to be careful to kind of with that balance so it doesn't get overwhelmed with other issues. And then Nafis will be saying, I want to drive and I want to pay for parking and I want to do all this thing because it's just too much. Or so I think, it's hard to keep track of all of those things that you want to try to to balance. There's always kind of new challenges. And also I think sometimes it's kind of what is the extent of the communication in terms of, is it meaningful, right? People spend a lot of times during calls and during meetings. And at first, I think now, even at RockCreek, we're still doing a lot of the meetings, a lot of calls and doing over communication, but still, it's not just for the sake of saying we're having a meeting to be connected, really trying to respect people's times and make it worthwhile that it's, really needed. So hopefully that, in my opinion, hopefully that will be something we'll come to value the time and not say, let's just meet for the sake of meeting. I think that's one of the things that has come out of this. We're more purposeful in terms of our interactions and treasuring it, when it's needed. So, well, I think we're kind of getting to the end of our time, but I did want to, kind of think about some of the takeaways for people who may be listening in and interested in things that women at RockCreek have found, I recommend. It could be, you know, a podcast, a movie, a book, a hack, if anyone put you on the spot to think of anything that you'd like to share with the group. I'll start out. I've been listening to the Gretchen Rubin podcast, you know, called Happier. And she has what I think, you know, are amazing tips and tricks about how to be happy, made resolutions. I did not do these, but it was something like 21 in 21, thinking about things, walking 21 minutes, or, you know, that was a theme of 21, and trying to increase happiness for families. So that's one recommendation that I have, but if anyone wanted to check that out. But Jan, do you?
My recommendation is to spend more time outside, because I find myself can sit in my home office, you know, from the morning to the evening, and with the weather getting nicer, you know, if you take your calls outside, you know, or go out, chat with a friend on the phone with a cup of tea, you come back and you're a different person. You feel very good.
That is so true.
Good advice. Yeah.
I would probably just, it's not something that I can really share, but I just want to say that being at home and cooking like every meal, every single meal for the past years, and I've been looking at some chef, you know, websites and recipes, trying to kind of change a little bit what I was cooking, because we were getting into some form of routine where especially the kids were not interested anymore. So to keep them interested in trying new things, I had to really work through my repertoire.
Sounds ambitious, but I like reading the recipes sometimes. So just for fun, without actually doing it. But Nina, how about you?
I guess my piece of advice, more so than a resource, is just whatever negative situation you're in, is find your positive. With the pandemic, it's obviously not a great situation, but I have learned what my positives are, my takeaways are. So whatever negative situation you're in, try to find your positive.
So we'll call Nina when we want to help extrapolate that, because sometimes it can be quite hidden, I think, right?
Yeah, I was going to mirror what Nina said, actually, because for me, like when I feel down or I feel it's a challenge, I always remind myself there's somebody else out there who's going through a worse situation than I am, so I have nothing to complain about. And I think that keeps me in check. And so I think also what Jan said, being outside more, because I have this Fitbit on my hand, and unless I get a reminder to get up and walk around, I will literally sit there all day. So when I get a reminder, that's something else that I do with my son also, because he has one. And so every time we get a reminder, it's something we can do to get up and walk for a few steps or whatever, then go back and sit down. So I think, yeah, like taking a break every once in a while is okay. You don't need to feel guilty about it. And I think if you're still at home with your kids, try to find a way to incorporate them into your day so they feel empowered and they feel important as well, because you can't ignore them, right? Even though you should be at work and he should be at school or whatever, but just making them feel they're part of your life and part of your day, and that you acknowledge that you're there. I think that's a positive. My son and I, we now call each other coworkers. So when I go down in the morning and I see him, say, "Good morning, coworker." He's already on his school call or whatever. So he's like, "Oh, hi, coworker, welcome," or whatever. So we just have a little thing there, but it just makes them feel, you know, like an adult or part of your life or whatever the case is. So.
That's really nice. That I have to remember that, coworker. Well, to all my coworkers on this call, I think you've been truly inspiring. It has been a fun chat. I look forward to future episodes with other senior leaders at RockCreek and not so senior women as well. So thanks again for joining, and we'll talk to you again.